Stop me if you've heard this before.
Ooh, I got it.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Rape joke. Rape joke? Rape joke who? Rape joke who's not fucking funny.
No.
No?
No.
Come on.
No.
All right, let's hear yours.
A foreigner moves to America. No, wait. He applies for a green card to move to America. And then that takes 2 or 4 years, so we've got some time before I get to the punchline.
Hilarious.
Immigration debate isn't exactly a new conversation in America.
All right, let's see. We have women who are protesting against Mexican immigrants. Help wanted, no Irish need apply, turn of the century, most likely. And Uncle Sam kicking a Chinaman in the butt, which is probably turn of last century. Not exactly current affairs, is it?
But lately, that debate has gotten even more heated, what with talk of travel bans and multi-billion-dollar border walls.
Travel bans are instituted by countries all the time. Just look at Qatar. Hell, travel bans are applied to Israel by certain countries. But you're not complaining about that. You're not complaining about Qatar either, are you? And as for the border wall, well, just look at Israel. It's been working pretty good for them so far.
Lots of people have their own ideas about the solution to the so-called illegal immigrant problem.
It's not a so-called illegal immigration problem. There is an illegal immigration problem. It's not so-called. It's pronounced. It's there. It's a problem. People are coming over the border illegally, overstaying their visas illegally, and in the process, they're draining the system. Continue.
But few realize or care how the immigration process in America actually works. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work.
Actually, it does. It takes a long time. It costs a lot of money, but it does actually work. I know. I'm an immigrant. I'm currently in the process of getting my green card renewed. It does work. Keep going.
For those who aren't in the know, why can't they just get in line to come here legally? Seems like a pretty reasonable question. But this isn't the old-timey days when 98% of people who showed up to Ellis Island were let into the country.
Newsflash, most people actually didn't come through Ellis Island. Ellis Island was not meant to be an immigration hub. Actually, there were more deportation out of Ellis Island than there were immigrants let in. And also, people were subjected to a lot more personal inquiries and tests coming through Ellis Island. They were not just let in willy-nilly. They had to go through health examinations, make sure that their mental status is good. It wasn't just, oh, you're at Ellis Island, you can come in now. No. Check your sources.
Today, America's immigration process is super long and super expensive. Follow me, if you will, through the hellish landscape that is green card land. It's like Candyland, only way more depressing.
Hilarious.
So you want to live and work in America. There are several ways to achieve this, and none of them are easy or necessarily guaranteed to make you a citizen.
Wait a second. We're talking about people who are immigrating here. They're not necessarily immigrating to become citizens. Some people come for a certain period of time to work, and then they leave. Not everybody who comes here becomes a citizen. Becoming a citizen is a separate issue from getting a work permit.
First, you've got to figure out what kind of tedious application journey you're about to embark on. Let's talk about a few. If you're from a country with a low immigration rate, you could apply for the Green Card Lottery, in which over 11 million people worldwide each year apply for only 50,000 available visas. Gotta love those less than 0.5% odds.
Yes, that's the definition of a lottery. You get the luck of the draw. You don't just apply for the lottery and expect to win. You apply for the lottery in hopes of winning, but you need to keep your options open, and the lottery is not the only option for people. It's one of 4, as you've so aptly pointed out.
But for argument's sake, let's say you apply for the lottery and don't win. You could file an employment-based application. All you need is an eligible employer in the United States to sponsor you and pay for the application process and prove you're not taking away a valuable job from a U.S. citizen.
Yes. Having an employer hire you based on your skills and your merit is something that happens. People do it all the time. Hell, I have a relative who lives in Boston. He works in the pharmaceutical industry, and he meets that criteria that you just illustrated. So, what's your point? That it's hard? Life is hard. Get used to it.
Don't worry, this will only take like a year to get approved by the Labor Department if you have a master's or PhD, and only 2 to 5 years if you don't.
Again, yes, you're absolutely right. It can take that period of time, and yes, you have to be outside of the country if you don't have lawful status. That's why it's called laws. You have to be able to follow laws in order to be able to get into the country. Getting into America is not a right, it's a privilege. And it's a privilege that can be revoked. If you don't meet the criteria, if you lie on your application, you can get deported. Or you can just be denied entry into America. What's your point?
Plus, you have to be outside the US if you don't have lawful status. And on top of that, you haven't even applied for the actual visa yet. Isn't waiting for years on slim hopes the best?
You know what? People actually live their entire lives without coming to America, and they become very successful. Being in America is not the be-all and end-all of life. But people still choose to go through this rigorous process for a reason. They want to live here, so they're willing to undertake the rigmarole that they're getting put through. It's worth it. Get over it.
But if you're really special, you can apply for a shiny EB-1 visa. That's for aliens of extraordinary ability. Basically, anyone who's managed to excel in the arts, business, academia, or athletics, and fits at least 3 of 10 special people requirements. Or they've made a cool one-time achievement like winning a Pulitzer, an Oscar, or an Olympic medal. What, you don't have a Pulitzer?
You don't? Huh. Funny. I thought being undecoded automatically makes you a Pulitzer winner. I guess not.
Let's say maybe the employer thing didn't work and your Pulitzer was lost in the mail. Well, you could have a family member petition for you, if they're already living in the United States legally.
And also if they're your immediate next of kin, i.e. if they're your brother, your sister, your mother, or your father. You can't have an uncle or a cousin sponsor you for immigration. It just doesn't work that way. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and your oversimplification is just flawed.
If you're flying solo, your last option is to find a spouse. Just be prepared to prove it's real. Contrary to every 90s sitcom sham green card marriage plot, the whole process doesn't take place in 30 hilarious minutes, but over the course of several months to a year.
Again, you're absolutely right. That's because life is not a sitcom or a movie. If you really love someone, and you move to America to live with them and marry them, the United States government wants to make sure that it's not a sham marriage. They want to be sure that this is legitimate and not a marriage of convenience. What is your point? God.
And you may even have to prove it again 2 years later if you haven't been married that long. But if you don't have an American bae, well, bye!
Yes. Again, you're correct. What's the problem with that? If your only alternative to immigrating to America is marrying an American, the American government wants to make sure that the marriage is legitimate. That means if after 2 years you're no longer married, you're gonna get deported. It's very simple.
Did I mention the cost of all of this? Because no matter what application you file, it's going to be a pretty penny. A standard green card application costs $1,760, and a lawyer to walk you through the filing process can run you anywhere from $500 to $10,000, depending on how complicated your case is going to be. Plus, there are literally hundreds of different forms that you may have to file, and all of them will cost something. You'll be shelling out money on fees to the government, lawyers, passport photos, biometrics, mailing costs, and so on, all while trying to, live your life.
Let me tell you a little story. Back in 2006, I decided to move to China in order to study the language. Now, this was a temporary visa for 6 months in order to go there, study the language, and then come back to Israel. Well, taking care of the initial visa was pretty easy. The school took care of that. But then after I decided to stay, after school has concluded, it was a lot more difficult than that. It costs a lot more money than that. And let me clue you in on a little secret. The Chinese government doesn't really want foreigners to stay that long. And sure, you do have some people who stay there for a very long period of time because they have special skills or because they married. But for the most part, the Chinese don't want people to stay. If you do decide to stay, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you every 6 months or every 3 months, depending on the type of visa that you have. And in 2008, about 2 years after I finished school, it was time for the Olympics. And during the Olympics, the Chinese government cracked down on people with visas that were illegitimate in their eyes. So instead of having multiple entries on my visa, which means that I can just stay there indefinitely for the duration of my visa, that means now if I'm getting a new visa that it's going to be limited to 2 or 3 entries. And you had to leave the country for up to 24 hours to reset said visa. And if you had no multiple entries, you were shit out of luck. It's not that simple to immigrate. And I sincerely doubt that you lived somewhere for a prolonged period of time outside of America. So you don't know what you're talking about. Proceed.
All right, so let's say you've managed to raise the money to pay all the fees and maybe get a decent lawyer. You've gathered all the necessary documents and filled out your applications to the best of your ability. Good job on answering no to "Are you a terrorist?"
Hilarious. Yes, you have to answer your questionnaire correctly. Yes, that question is ridiculous. But you know what? They want to make sure you're paying attention.
You win, right? You've reached Green Card Castle. No. The Department of Homeland Security, which now manages immigration, is notorious for its backlogged, outdated system. An application can get rejected for all kinds of reasons. Maybe your passport photos aren't the right size, or you forgot to check a box on page 19. And even if your application is perfect, you can wait up to 4 years for a response, and in some cases, even 10.
Not necessarily. See, this is a case of context dependent. You can wait for 4 years depending on your case. It all very much depends on the context. And yes, if you misfile a form or if you don't fill it out properly, if you didn't have a lawyer do the initial work for you, if you didn't submit all the documents that the immigration department has requested, then yeah, it's either going to take you a very long time or the application's going to be outright rejected. They want to make sure that you're doing the right thing, that you know what you're getting into. This is not going into the 7-Eleven and getting a Slurpee. This is immigrating to another country. God.
Plus, if you're rejected after all this, you could face deportation or go back to starting this long and costly green card land adventure.
If you're not eligible for immigrant status and you've been upfront about it with Homeland Security, you will get deported. Unfortunately, you get millions of people who are not upfront with their immigration status with Homeland Security. That's the problem that we have. You initially called it a so-called problem. It is a problem. You have millions of people living in the U.S. illegally, and they do not have to go through the process of getting a green card that you so aptly illustrated so far. You are just ignorant about immigration. You just want to open the borders for everybody willy-nilly to get in, live their lives, and do nothing about it. No borders, no sovereignty. Just let everybody in. That's your solution, right? It boils my blood to see this. To see you and other people advocating for free immigration just because the current system is a little slow.
Look, America is a country of immigrants.
Yes, America is a country of immigrants, but they all came in through controlled immigration. Yes, sure, you had refugees sometimes, you had people who came in and sought asylum. Absolutely, yes. But we're not talking about controlled immigration. We're not talking about legal immigration here. We're talking about illegal immigration, and you're complaining about the green card process where people do it legally.
Native Americans, of course, and African Americans who were, brought here against their will.
You had to slip that in, didn't you? Slavery. God, isn't it current year? Thought it was current year.
Obviously, undocumented immigration is a complex issue, which means there's no easy solution. But maybe before building a wall or issuing highly specific travel bans, we should focus on building a better system for welcoming new folks in.
Right now, unchecked immigration poses a very serious issue in America. This is one of the major reasons why Donald Trump got elected. You can't just rebuild a system and expect it to work instantaneously. This is a process that's going to take time. That's why when Donald Trump asked for a moratorium on immigration from specifically countries that Barack Obama selected, he did the right thing. But you can't have him do the right thing. You have to push your agenda and you have to push your narrative because it doesn't fit with anything else. I'm an immigrant, Francesca. I did it legally. And what you're saying here insults not only me, but it insults anybody else who did this legally. Because we have to sit here and watch and see how people are coming in illegally, overstay their visa, and they stay. They're not doing it above board. They're not doing it legally. And they're not spending a dime. In the meantime, people like me are doing it above board. We're doing it legally. We're doing it by the book, as it's supposed to be done. You're an ass. This has been The Finer Print. I'm out.